Chapter 6, Kanemitsu. Yosho woke to the sound of leaves rustling and Misaki moving about the outer wall of Tenju. It's morning already. I didn't sleep very well. It had been a week since he came back to Jurai, and he was still not physically used to the tension and circadian rhythm on Jurai. It was exhausting to deal with Aika and Misaki, who happily romped around on being able to see Yosho again. He realized that his senses had dulled physically and mentally more than he had thought, and was acutely aware of why Sito had brought him back after only 6 months. Strangely, he had gotten over his feelings for Misaki. There were days in the final 3 months at the academy when he did not even remember her. Well, I was busy, and Aridano had filled up the rest of my free time, so I didn't have the time to be sentimental. Good morning, Yosho-chan. I mean, Yoshidano. Misaki made her way inside his room, which was unusual. Misaki-sama, were you still asleep? Come on, get up. You have places to go. Yosho clutched his covers so they would not be ripped off him and asked, Did I have plans today? Official business for House Kamiki, but mother suddenly said to bring you too. Sita-sama. Yes. Come on, hurry. All right, please don't pull. He shooed Misaki out of his room, got ready, and headed to Jurai Imperial Academy as specified by Sito. That day, there was a ceremony to send off the cadets on a training voyage, and since Atsutsumi was an alumni, he attended every year. The white yukigasumi, or powder snow flowers, which resembled cherry blossoms on Earth, were in full bloom. I look forward to this view every year. Walking the vast gardens on the way to campus, Sita was entranced. Next to her, Atsutsumi maintained a stony silence. Yosho walked between them, looked sidelong at a grouchy Atsutsumi, and asked Sita-sama, why bring me here today? Sito ignored Yosho and looked at her husband. Dear, I'm going to take Yoshidano and Misaki on an errand. You go on ahead. But I was going to show him around. Shouldn't we introduce him to the faculty here? Atsutsumi answered in a dignified voice. Sito smiled scornfully and said, Why don't you do that after the send-off ceremony? Azusa. I mean, the emperor used to attend here. Some want to see his son. A hint of panicked impatience was in Atsutsumi's voice. Then shall I accompany you, Atsutsumi-sama? Yosho suggested, as from Atsutsumi's attitude and Sito's meaningful expression, he figured that something was up, and for reasons unclear to him determined that he should side with Atsutsumi. Atsutsumi returned a smile of relief at his proposal. All right, then come with me. I'll show you all the interesting places. Thank you, Atsutsumi-sama. How admirable of you, Yoshidano. Of course, Sito knew what he was thinking. But I'm afraid this must be done before the ceremony. Then we'll go ahead. You go do the errand. This has to do with Yoshidano, dear. Sito attacked him as if she were peeling one finger off at a time as he clung desperately on a cliff. All right, then I'll go with you. Just as Atsutsumi said this, Misaki appeared behind him and grabbed him. Sito took Yosho's shoulders tightly. Yosho-chan, this is where he molested me. Sito appealed with tears in her eyes. Needless to say, this was a false claim. For decency's sake. Atsutsumi yelled red-faced, abandoning all pretense of dignity he had so desperately composed. No matter how he struggled, Misaki did not budge in her bear hug. Sadly for him, Misaki was more physically powerful than her father. To add insult to injury, Sito admitted, blushing, that day, the yukigasumi flowers were in full bloom, just like today. I was napping among the bushes when something suddenly fell on top of me. He's too young for this. Considering how Atsutsumi did not deny it, this part seemed to be true. I resisted with all my strength. But I was too weak. Sito dabbed her tears with the hem of Yosho's clothes. How are you weak, you old bag? Nobody could deny this point. And he reached for my heaving bosom. No. I tripped. And I fell on top of you, that was it. Unable to hold back, Atsutsumi shouted. But you touched my breast. It was an accident. I didn't mean to. I fell on top of you so I couldn't help it. The teacher told me to go look for you because you didn't show up, even though the entrance ceremony was starting already. And you were napping like you didn't have a care in the world. Besides, I was only 9 years old at the time. He did not realize that he was telling the whole story himself. Mother was 4,500 years old at the time, by the way. Misaki certainly did not know when to keep quiet. Sure enough, she got a knock on the head from Sito. That was not necessary. Ow, Misaki glared at her reproachfully, though it was commendable that she'd kept her hold on Utsutsumi. I was so surprised. It had been so long since anyone had touched my bosom. The terrifying scowl transformed into the expression of a fragile victim. Her face blushing, Sito leaned coquettishly against Yosho. Since she was breathtakingly beautiful, the whole thing seemed sensual upon first glance. But after seeing the withering glare she'd aimed at Misaki, not even the most hot-blooded man would be turned on. Well, of course. Nobody would be reckless enough to harass the demon princess of Jurai. Utsutsumi thoughtlessly let slip out what Yosho had kept to himself. Yosho-chan, Caterpillar Face is bullying me. After all he did to me. Sito clung to Yosho, collapsing into tears. A boy of tender years simply tumbled on top of you, and you said, "I've been ruined and can't get married anymore. You'll have to step up and take responsibility in all seriousness." I was joking. How was a 9-year-old boy supposed to know? I could barely eat from sheer terror for a whole month. You collapsed from malnutrition and went to the hospital, right? Without missing a beat, Misaki made another dig at her father. That's right. And 130 years of suffering later, I finally got up the courage to face you, and I offered to take responsibility, and you. What did she do? Yosho asked. Sito stuck out her tongue. I burst out laughing. He took 130 years, and he proposed without as much as a preface. 130 years is too short after learning your true nature. Yosho remembered that the older generations were unanimous in calling her terrifying. Sito nodded, satisfied, and turned to Yosho with a smile. So there you have it. He tried to take you with a myriad of excuses because he was afraid I was going to talk about what he just detailed to you himself. Oh, Yosho looked sidelong at Utsutsumi, who was aghast upon realizing what he had done. You told him everything, so there's nothing to worry about anymore, is there? Come along, Yosho Dano. Yosho looked behind him as Sito led him away and saw Utsutsumi drowning in melancholy, his hands planted on the ground and his head hung low. For the first time, he realized why Azusa, his father, gave his full attention to how he handled Sito, why those who really knew her feared her so much, and why she was called the Demon Princess of Jurai. I didn't want to understand like this. I'll be careful from now on, too, he thought from the bottom of his heart. Welcome, Sito-sama, Misaki-sama, and Yosho-sama. Sito had brought Yosho to the academy principal's room. He was an old man, but he was hale and hearty, and unlike others, he was unabashed when faced with Sito. Sito and Misaki, likewise, had casual expressions without their social masks. I summoned the person you requested not long ago, so he should be here momentarily. I see. That's good timing. Were you watching us come over? Sito turned with an embarrassed smile. Yes, I can see very well from the window here. I hoped you wouldn't bully Utsutsumi Dano so much. And Misaki-sama. Yes, sir. Misaki straightened up nervously and stood at attention. It was rare for her to act like this with anyone besides Sito. Sito would later tell Yosho that the principal used to be Misaki's mentor back when she was in school. You should lay off on riding Sito-sama's coattails and engaging in wacky hijinks. You are a mother now. But, sir? But what? Nothing. Her voice was barely audible. Yosho could imagine what her student years were like. Getting scolded like this often, probably. Now, Mr. Principal. That's probably enough, since Yosho Dano is here and all. It was embarrassing to be scolded in front of her son, even a stepson. He agreed with what she had to say, but he looked at the flowers outside and said, Sito-sama, Were you rehashing that old story again? Sito hesitated for a moment, but then feigned innocence with unconcerned laughter. If Atsutsumi had been here, it would have been awkward to say the least. The moment the principal opened his mouth to say something, there was a knock on the door. He's here. Come in. Excuse me. Hirata Kanemitsu, with an Imperial Academy uniform, strode into the room. But as soon as he did, he froze upon seeing who was also present. I apologize for the sudden summons. The principal had anticipated Kanemitsu's reaction, spoke to him gently to ease his anxiety, and placed a hand on his shoulder to reassure him. What did you need me for? Kanemitsu managed to speak somehow, but he was still nervous. It was little wonder, as he was facing Misaki, the wife of his sovereign, and though married, still the most popular among the warriors, and Sito, her mother, feared by friend and foe as the demon princess of Jurai, the legendary Amazon. For Kanemitsu, who idolized them, it was unreasonable to ask him not to be nervous. Kanemitsu's demeanor resulted in showing Yosho the position he held as a member of the imperial family. A mere encounter petrified people, striking fear deep in their hearts. He also saw how immature he was compared to Sito's charisma. This meeting was a shock for Yosho as well. Don't be so nervous. We're here today as Yosho's family. Sito gently took Kanemitsu's hand without putting any weird pressure on, which was unusual for her. Although that was enough for his cheeks to flush and beads of sweat to appear on his forehead. Uh-oh. Yosho almost shouted as he glanced at Misaki. The corners of her mouth were twisted and trembling slightly. Misaki had the habit of glomming onto anything and anyone she deemed cute. She held back while she was on official business as Empress, but when she came close to her limit, this was the warning signal. If she were to glom onto Kanemitsu right now, he might die from shock. But Yosho could not hold her back, and Sito was in the middle of introductions. His eyes met with those of the principal, standing a step behind Kanemitsu, and signaled him by glancing towards Misaki. Sito-sama. Here, would you like to sit down on the sofa? As hoped, the principal was aware of Misaki's habits and deftly let Sito know of Misaki's situation. I'm sorry, I was being inconsiderate. Please. Sito stepped back to make way for Kanemitsu and did not forget to nonchalantly step on Misaki's foot. Ow! Sito encouraged Kanemitsu to sit down, then sat across from him and cut to the chase. We asked you to come here today to thank you for taking care of Yosho at Galaxy Academy, and also, Kanemitsu clenched his fists tightly and looked down. He thought he was going to be rebuked for being Keisen's puppet, as well as House Amaki's. With Yosho being there, he could not think of any other business. Sito noticed all this and continued with a smile. Kanemitsu-dano, would you want to study at the academy again? What? Galaxy Academy. Kanemitsu lifted his face at the unexpected words. Yes, that's right. Did Yosho? He regained some of his composure, thought Yosho had said something to Sito, and turned to face him. Yosho shook his head, barely perceptibly, denying it. It was truly unfortunate that you had to return during the exam period and were unable to take the exams in 4 subjects. However, I received a report that of the 11 subjects you were able to take the exams for, your grades were all at the top of the class. If you are willing, I shall permit it under my name, Kamiki Sito Jurai. This offer was extremely appealing for him, and an imperial mandate from Sito herself. But Kanemitsu was unable to answer and remained silent for a while. Sito waited patiently. She knew why he hesitated, what he was particular about, and could predict how he would answer. Kanemitsu opened his mouth as if wringing the words out, I went to study there on orders from the Amaki family. And I returned to Jurai upon those orders. Going to study at Galaxy Academy was my dream. I could never express enough appreciation for your kindness, but my desire is that this is one dream I must bring to fruition on my own. There were some things that could not be conferred, even by the imperial family or people he respected. Kanemitsu had ruined it once. He realized it was due to his own inexperience. He knew that he would not make the same mistake again. To work for Sito and Misaki, his idols, was what he wanted. But he could not as long as he could not be confident in himself. He could not honestly say that he wasn't resentful of the Amaki family for forcing him to return to Jurai. He never wanted to have to resent Sito or Misaki because of his inexperience. He was yet another awkward, stubborn Jurai man. All right, Sito answered regretfully, but inside, she was satisfied that he had answered exactly as she had expected. But there was no way Sito was backing down, and of course she had prepared her next scheme. But Kanamitsu Dano, while applying to the academy will be easier than before, you will still need to pay a substantial sum. It will take you decades to raise the funds. I am prepared for that. Kanamitsu Dano, would you like to make a wager with me? She turned a provoking smile to him. She was revealing her true colors. A wager. Yes. The rules are simple. I will provide, out of my own pocket, twice the amount Jurai's federally financed study would provide. We will divide the expenses necessary for study by the number of exams needed for minimum credits in both semesters. If you are top of the class in those exams, I'll pay the entire amount. If you are second, I will pay half. If you are third, half of that again, and so on every time you fall in rank. If you are the top in all your subjects, you will owe nothing for the entire year. I will provide bonuses for other exams you pass and awards you earn. You can devote yourself to study as long as you want, whether decades or hundreds of years. Meanwhile, I will not interfere with anything you do. Once you have had your fill, you will come work for me to pay off whatever you could not offset. With skillful intonations of her voice and expressions, and subtle pauses, she pulled him into her grasp. What do you think? Would you accept? Is that all? The conditions seemed easy for Kanamitsu. In actuality, he had almost always been the top in the core requirements, so he was confident. But maintaining top ranks every single time is a difficult undertaking. You might end up working for me for the rest of your life. If you're not confident, you shouldn't do it. Well, it was a gentle provocation for Sito. Of course, Kanamitsu had been so nervous just a minute ago, and now he was excitedly discussing a wager with Sito. She was good at making him play her game. All right. I accept. Then that's settled. Kanamitsu reflexively took the hand outstretched by Sito. After the fact, he realized that he was holding her hand, blushed, and let go. Sito chuckled. Kanamitsu Dano, when will you start? You can go right away, but what does the principal think? Kanamitsu-kun, what are your thoughts? The principal's tone was a little flabbergasted. I'd like to go after the training voyage. Yes, that sounds good. Sito-sama. All right, I shall make arrangements. I will say this again during the ceremony, but please have a safe voyage. I will await your return. Have a nice trip. Kanamitsu blushed even further at Sito and Misaki's kind words. The students attending the ceremony were looking forward to these words. The words normally saved for millions of citizens were shared among a few select hundred. But these words right now were for Kanamitsu alone. Yosho thought of another gift. This will be Kanamitsu Dano's first long voyage. That's right. Then here is something from me. Since Sito had started this custom herself, the words from Yosho clued her in. She cut off a lock of her hair and handed it to him. Thank you. Kanamitsu was touched and moved to tears. Oh, a good luck charm? Then I will also. Misaki grabbed her ponytail and everyone present opened their eyes wide in shock. Misaki chopped off a full third of her long hair and handed the bundle over with a smile. Kanamitsu, overcome by nervousness and extreme emotions, lost consciousness where he stood. Sito-sama, thank you for Kanamitsu Dano. After Kanamitsu had left the room as if walking in a dream, Yosho bowed deeply to thank Sito. Talented youth is the most valued treasure in Jurai. This was the obvious thing to do. Sito looked at Yosho with her best smile. However, this will be the best day of Kanamitsu-kun's life. I pray that he will never turn wise to your machinations. The principal's words were genial but barbed. Did I overstep my bounds? Not at all. I'm just saying I hope he won't discover you had the Academy's invitation to him as a scholarship student shelved. What? Yosho looked at Sito in shock. Oh, you knew? I didn't want anyone else to have him. This is our secret, Yosho Dano, Sito chuckled. Yosho was speechless. A scholarship would have been fully paid for by the Academy, and the student would not have to pay it back. This is the point at which his father, the Emperor of Jurai, would have said, "Old bag." Though, rationally speaking, this was very much in line with the way she was. At least Kenomitsu would not be unhappy. Sito was one of the best to call one's master, despite a few parts of her disposition, and he respected her. He would never be bored being at her mercy. I can't believe her. There was a god and a demon on Jurai. Yosho remembered the words of the leader of the pirate guild when they sought asylum from the Galaxy Police.